Hey guys, today I'm going to be ranking every stratagem in Helldivers 2. Let's get started. Alright, beginning with the normal machine gun. This thing, it's a decent starting weapon. It's one of the first two stratagems you get in the game, but it really doesn't take you very far, so I'm going to go and stick it in D tier. Next to the sniper. This thing, I enjoyed using it for a while. It's really decent up until about like level 10, 15, I'd say, if it even gets you that far. Can handle medium armored enemies decently against the bots, like the walkers and other stuff. I'll go ahead and give it C tier. Moving on to the Stalwart, it's really just a better machine gun. You get a bit more mobility and a little extra ammo in every magazine. So I'll also give it C tier. Moving on to the EAT 17. This thing is honestly very good against any armored targets. Can one-shot chargers, usually 2 to 3-shot Bile Titans. Can 1 to 2-shot Hulks if you hit them in the face. And it has a really good cooldown, so I'd give it S tier, but I think the new Quazar Cannon kind of replaces it a bit, so I'll give it A tier. Moving on to the recoilless rifle. This thing is kind of overshadowed by the EAT 17 and the Quasar Cannon, so I'm honestly going to put it in D tier. It just doesn't have a place right now. Next is the Flamethrower. This thing is pretty useless against the bots. They're just going to shoot you before you can even get close. Against the bugs, it can decently clear out hordes, but you're just going to set yourself on fire half the time anyway, so I wouldn't recommend it. I'm going to go and stick it in C tier. Moving on to the Autocannon. This thing is really good against any type of enemy armor, good against the bots and the bugs, but it's overall really good gun. I'll go and give it A tier. Next, the new heavy machine gun. I have not gotten to mess around with this too much, but it seems decent apart from its really low ammo count in each magazine. But it seems to destroy armor pretty well, so I'll go and give it B tier. Next is the railgun. This used to be the best support weapon in the game, honestly. It still is pretty good. It has trouble penetrating tougher armor now, unless you fully charge it in unsafe mode, which can be dangerous sometimes. So because of that, I'll give it B tier. Okay, next is the spear. This thing is trash. Do not use it. It never locks on correctly. It never one-shots anything, and it's really hard to get ammo for. It's just, you have so many better options. Don't bring it. Next is the grenade launcher. This thing is actually very effective against hordes of enemies and pairs really well with the supply pack for getting a lot of ammo. It can also destroy bug holes, which is incredibly helpful, as there can sometimes be 10 of those in one nest. So because of all that, I think I'll give it B tier. Next is the laser cannon. This thing is a little underwhelming. It did get buffed recently, so it can decently melt things a lot faster, and they did kind of, I think, increase the time until it overheats. On cold planets, I think it is pretty effective, but other than that, it's pretty mid, so I'll go give it C tier. Next is the Ark Thrower. This thing, some people really like this thing, some people don't. It's really difficult to use correctly, as if you don't, it'll TK a lot. But from my average experience with it, I'm just going to give it D tier. It can be used effectively, but I really don't see anyone ever do that. Next is the Quasar Cannon. This thing seems really good. It just got added recently to the game. It basically is a better EAT 17 as you get infinite ammo after a short cooldown, and it does have to charge up for a little bit before you can shoot. But I think it's an easy S tier. Moving on to the Eagle stratagems. The Eagle Strafing Ground is one of the earliest stratagems most people buy. It is decent when you get it, but it doesn't last very long before you get much better options, so I'll give it D tier. Next is the Eagle Airstrike. This thing can basically do everything. It can destroy Titans, Hulks, tanks, anything you need, bot factories, and you can end up with 3 of them once you fully upgrade your hangar, so I'll give it S tier for that. Next is the Eagle Cluster Bomb. This thing is very good against hordes of enemies, not so effective against heavy enemy armor such as tanks or Hulks, or even Titans, but it will take out any other types of enemies pretty effectively, so I'll give it A tier. Next is the Eagle Fire Strike. Unfortunately, dot damage in Helldivers just really doesn't do a lot. So all this really does is cut off areas, but more often than not, I find that it's just going to cut off areas that you need to get to once you launch it. So I'm going to give it C tier. It just isn't that amazing. Okay, Eagle Smoke. Smoke in this game is just awful. With the Orbital one, yeah, just do not bring these. These will not help you. They're just going to cut off your own line of sight, and the enemies will keep shooting you through it if you're fighting the bots. Just don't bring it. Next is the Eagle 110 rocket pods. These things are a little inconsistent from what I've seen. Sometimes they'll do exactly what you need them to, sometimes they'll just hit nothing. It just won't blow up anything. So honestly, I'm going to give them C tier. They're just a little underwhelming. Okay, the Eagle 500-pound bomb. This thing is honestly kind of insane. I usually bring this on every mission I'm playing. You can pretty much one-shot anything if you get a direct hit, and combined with stun grenades, it's actually very effective. So I'm going to give it S tier for that. Next is the mines. Mines in general are not great. They're just going to team kill more than anything and cut off areas that your team needs to get to. Flame mines are trash. They literally can't even kill enemies effectively. The normal mines can be okay if you throw them behind you when you're escaping a big horde, so I'll give them D tier, but really don't bring these. Just bring anything else. Moving on to the Tesla Tower. This combined with the new armor, this thing is actually kind of decent now. Still isn't amazing though, but I'll give it C tier just because you can get some use out of it. Next is the Emplacement Machine Gun. This thing, it doesn't do a whole lot. It's slow to turn. It can do decent damage, but against boss, you're just going to get hit with a rocket almost immediately, and the bugs are just going to swarm you eventually if you can't kill any of the heavy ones. So I want to give it D tier, and I'll give it D tier. It doesn't deserve any higher than that. Next is the shield emplacement. This thing does have a really short cooldown time and can provide much needed cover, especially against the bots when they're just shooting at you constantly. Bugs, it's pretty useless against. They're just going to run through it and hit you anyway. I'll give it C tier. It can be used decently against the bots. Okay, next we've got the Orbital Stratagems. So the Orbital Precision, it's one of the first two stratagems you get, and honestly, it really has no downsides. It has a good cooldown. It can really kill pretty much anything with direct hits. It might take two to kill something like a Bile Titan or a tank, for example, but honestly, I'm going to give it B tier. This thing's just a solid stratagem. Moving on to the Gatling Barrage. This is one of the first ones most people buy. It's pretty cheap. Short cooldown time, can kill lightly armored targets very well, but doesn't do a whole lot after that, so it's going to be D tier. The Orbital Airbush Strike is very similar to the Gatling Barrage, but maybe slightly better, so I'll give it C tier. The Orbital Gas Strike, honestly, this thing's trash. It's just going to lay down a small field of gas around some enemies. Dot damage just doesn't do a lot, same with like fire, just you have much better options than this. The Orbital EMS Field, this thing's an interesting one. It can be very effective if you're trying to escape a group of enemies, and it has a short cooldown. It's not like amazing though, so I'll just give it C tier. Just put it in the middle. The Orbital 120 and 380 barrages, these are very effective if you can coordinate with your team. If not, you're just gonna kill them with it. But the 380 is one of my favorites for just blowing up like a bot heavy base. It'll destroy everything, so I'm gonna give it B tier. Just make sure you coordinate it with your team. The 120 is slightly less powerful, so it's gonna go in C. The Orbital Walking Barrage is just, it doesn't do a whole lot. It's basically going to fire a stream of, pretty much it's like the Precision Strike, except it's going to fire about like 6 of them just straight in front of you. And it's supposed to give you time to advance on the enemy, but it just doesn't do its job very effectively, so I'm going to give it D tier. The Orbital Laser is honestly a very effective stratagem. It can pretty much kill anything given enough time, even a Bile Titan or a tank. It'll just eventually get through its armor, but you only get 3 uses, and it does have a fairly long cooldown, so I'm going to give it A tier. The Orbital Rail Cannon is an easy S tier. This thing can one-shot literally anything in the game. Sometimes it does need some luck, but anything in the game can get one-shot by it. Has a good cooldown, and it deploys instantly. You literally can't miss. Okay, the Jump Pack. This thing can be really good. You can get yourself into some pretty interesting spots, especially against the bugs where they can't always get to you. Against the bots, you're just going to get shot though, no matter really where you are. I'll give it B tier. It does take up a backpack slot, which you have obviously some really good options for that, so it's going to go in B. The supply pack, this is definitely an S tier. Just having basically an entire resupply on your back is just kind of insane. You can press 5 on your keyboard to give yourself supplies. You can share with your team. You literally have infinite stims pretty much, grenades, ammo. Pairs really well with low ammo guns such as the heavy machine gun. It's amazing. The Ballistic Shield pack, this thing's trash. It doesn't do anything. If you run it against the bugs, charges is going to knock you down. Against the bots, a Rocket Devastator will kill you in 2 seconds. It won't even block that. Just don't bring this at all. The Guard Dog Rover, this thing is actually pretty effective, especially against the bugs. And for that, I'm going to give it A tier. I see a lot of people using this, and I do enjoy using it too. The Guard Dog, the machine gun one, just is not even close to as good. So for that, it's going to go in D tier. You maybe can get some use out of it, but it's nowhere near as good as this one. The shield pack, this thing got nerfed recently, but I think it's still S tier. Just being able to tank any amount of extra damage is just amazing in this game. You can survive a bile spewer, basically an entire attack from it. You can survive a rocket to the face from a rocket devastator. I mean, this thing is amazing. Okay, moving on to the sentries. The normal sentry isn't bad, but the Gatling Sentry is just better in pretty much every way, so it's going to go in D tier. The only reason to bring this is if it's all you have, because it's cheaper. The Gatling Sentry, this thing is actually really good against light enemies and pretty much mows down hordes of bugs or light bots pretty quickly. So for that, it's going to go in B tier. The Mortar Sentry, this thing's one of my favorites because it's very effective against both enemy types because you can put it literally wherever you need to and it can shoot over things. I'd put it in S tier, but it can TK a lot if you're fighting bugs when they get close to your teammates, so I'm gonna put it in A tier for that. The Autocannon Sentry, this thing, again, it's another really good sentry. It can pretty much destroy anything given enough time. It has very good armor piercing, good against any type of enemy. I'll give it A tier for that, I think. Yeah, the Rocket Sentry, I am not a big fan of. This thing really doesn't do a whole lot. It's said to destroy armor very well, but the autocannon is just so much better than this one. I want to, honestly, I want to give it D tier, but maybe C. I'll give it C tier just because sometimes you can combine the two in like the defense missions and they can be effective. But yeah, this one's just better if you're only bringing one. The EMS Mortar Sentry, this thing's an S tier. It's basically exactly like the Mortar Sentry, except instead of firing explosives, it fires EMS fields similar to the EMS Strike that'll completely stop enemies from moving. And this thing, if you can hide it in a good spot, you can pretty much escape anything that's chasing you. The only downside is it will also affect you if you get stuck in that field, but you can actually slowly move through it and enemies get completely stopped, and it won't kill you at all. So, easy S tier. Okay, and then the last one, the Exosuit. This thing's interesting because it's very good against the bugs, like insane against them, but against the bots, it's almost entirely useless because they're just going to blow it up almost instantly. I'm still going to give it A tier because I love using it against the bugs, and I think it still deserves that. Just don't use it against the bots at all, I would say. All right. I think I'm pretty happy with these placements. Let's see if anything needs to get moved. I think I was a little too hard on the Ark Thrower. I'm gonna give it C tier. I think it is more effective than I kind of gave it credit for. But overall, I think I'm pretty happy with this list. So yeah, let me know what you thought about it. If you liked the tier list, make sure to like the video. And if you didn't like the tier list, then leave a comment. Let me know what you would have done differently. And yeah, thank you for watching.